Hey everybody, welcome to this week's episode of Pensado's Place. You're going to meet Marc Urselli, an amazing guy, producer, mixer, engineer, front of house, sound design. He does it all, and a very cool guy on top of it. But first, let's talk about summer. It is here. There's a bunch going on. Advantage you. First off, Sweetwater's Gearfest is virtual this year. It's June 25th and 26th. That means it's this weekend coming up. Workshops, panels, incredible sales, and you can check it all out at sweetwater.com Gearfest. Learn from folks like Joe Barisi, Steve Vai, Quentin Gilkey, Andrew Sheps, DJ Jazzy Jeff, CLA, and a whole bunch more. $50,000 giveaways with hourly prizes. What? Go to sweetwater.com/giveaway to register to win. And so that you remember, June 25th and 26th, sweetwater.com/Gearfest to participate, sweetwater.com/giveaway to win prizes. Go there right now. Also, our friends at NAMM, they are rocking Summer NAMM live and in living color. Go to www.namm.org to register. Going to be great events on site, great events off site. Turn up in Nashville, let our NAMM family take care of you, and they will. We've been telling you a lot about Arturia. Great stuff. State-of-the-art DSP expertise in virtual instruments. They're just released. FX Collection 2 is just amazing. 22 stunning emulations of vintage studio processors and effects in one amazing audio suite. And if you hurry, you can get all that for $299, but you got to hurry up and get to it. It's about $14 per plug-in. Our guests rave about them. Dave raves about them. Head to www.arturia.com for all the details. We've got a show talking about them coming up very soon. And then for a school that's just doing incredible stuff, the 1500 Sound Academy, they're finishing up their studio side, but classes are going on. You can get a free virtual workshop. You definitely want to do that. Learn about your craft, learn about the business from people living it. And I can tell you that they're doing some very high-level things that'll not only get you educated, but likely get you a job. You want to go to 1500sound.academy and make sure that you are tied into that stuff. So as I said, lots of stuff going on this summer. New plugin coming from Blackbird. You didn't hear me say that, but stay tuned. Good stuff coming. Hit us up on all of our socials. Sign up for our newsletter if you would. Like and subscribe. Again, it's going to be a bountiful summer, and we want it for you. A little while ago, we had a great conversation with Marc Urselli, a super talented guy. Please enjoy. Hey, dude.
Marc, hello, guys. How are you?
Man, it's a pleasure to have you. I don't know. Did you get I meant to tell you before we started rolling. Did you get the casting information?
I didn't get any information. What information are you talking about?
Let me share.
I see a cast behind you.
Yeah, but this is about you. So if you're born in Switzerland, raised in Italy, educated in Italy, and you live between New York and London, and you mix really cool hot bands like U2 and Lou Reed, a bunch of stuff, the only guy that can play, plus you have cool hair and cool glasses, the only guy that can play you is George Clooney. So we got that deal worked out right before. I just wanted to get your approval. Do you approve?
I think George Clooney is absolutely hot, although women have told me that I look more like Keanu Reeves, but you guys make those decisions. So well,
we thought the acting should be deep. So George beat you on the acting side.
George definitely beats him on the acting.
Yeah, absolutely. But on the real front, one of the things that's always fun for us is occasionally we come across people who manage to straddle the line between purists and accepting technology in its where it's going, but not letting it handle you. I think you fit that profile. Would you agree with that?
I would agree, yes.
Yeah. And what happens is, like, when I hear your work, there's a precision in your work that doesn't feel forced. It feels natural, like you've paid attention. And then there's this kind of mixture of your live side and your studio side, but it's in balance to the music. And as I researched you, I could hear you in your mixes in such a way. And I just want to say it makes me a fan because I think technology folks are as much part of the band as the band. It just brings, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, well, that's very kind words of you. I'm flattered. I mean, I agree with the statement that you made, because I think in general, the truth is always in the middle. I think we're doing a job that's all about shades of gray and not about black or white.
Yeah.
So, the shades of gray are between live and studio. They're between jazz and metal. They're between digital and analog. And I love being in the middle of all those and pick the best from both worlds,
Fantastic.
One of the things that I noticed was simplicity in your work. And I don't mean that in terms of sparse. I mean it in terms of if you were cooking a meal, you wouldn't use a lot of spices and you'd use fresh ingredients. You know what I'm saying? It's like, I love that about your work. And then also there's an order to your creativity. And I'm just the opposite. If I got 25 new plugins that day, they all go on the mix. I don't care if they need it or not. And then by the end of the mix, only one's left. But yeah, I think Herb hit the nail on the head. There's something about your work that really is special in terms of the way you approach things. And then,
wow, thank you.
The diversity of and width of your skill set with respect to genres it makes me envious,
Well, are you guys going to at some point say something negative about me? Because I'm
it's coming.
blushing.
Well, I sort of hate you, so.
We're
I mean, I want to thank you both for being so generous in your choice of words with me. I always say to people that the thing in my career that I'm most proud of is not so much a single artist, but the fact that I was able to not let people pigeonhole me and to work outside of the box and be able to continue working throughout my career with all the genres I love and I listen to. I listen to jazz, I listen to classical music, I listen to metal, I listen to rock, and I work within all of those genres. And because I've grown up listening to those genres, I don't feel out of place or outside of my comfort zone when I record and mix these genres. I feel perfectly at ease. So like this week alone, I've done a jazz metal record. Then I did a metal throat singing thing, and then I mixed an opera. It was all in the same week. And so I like to keep it that way. I think variety is the spice of life. So,
yeah. And I think too, I was thinking about your John Zorn experience where, 14 bands, 11 stage changes, 18-hour days for you. The thing about people who think like you do is that there's so much to pull from because you have so much input coming in, and who knows what's going to pop up when you're faced with whatever potential challenge. And I think that's where exciting things come from. They come from leaning over the cliff, sometimes stepping over it, and then finding a solution so you can float down to earth. Is that part of the kind of process that happens?
I fully agree with you, Herb. I think when you're living on the edge, quote unquote, that's when interesting things happen. Zorn is one of those people that likes to push the boundaries and take you with him. Mm-hmm. He always says to his musicians, oftentimes before a session, he'll tell the musicians that if something is too hard, he'll work at it with them because he wants them to go where he think they can go, even if they think they can't go there. And they always end up getting there.
Yeah.
And it's the same with everyone who works with him. That's how we end up with these, 18-hour days with 11 stage changes to do a 4-hour show. But also in the studio, the metal jazz record that I mentioned a minute ago, which was with John Zorn this weekend. Oh. And it was a record that has literally everything from like tipping jazz with like organ and guitar comping to like full-on metal band with double kick drum and snare blasts and all of that. It's all within the same record. And I love that. Another person that I worked with extensively what that also shares that kind of working on the edge of chaos thing is Hal Wilner. He was always like pulling things in last minute, throwing me curveballs, adding 5 guests. It's for me as an engineer, it was always about preparation with him. But both of those are artists, Zorn and Wilner, were people that like to be on the edge of things and make things interesting by being there.
Yeah.
One of my favorite records that you've done is Les Paul. I love Les Paul. He's like, did you get to meet him?
Of course, of course. We spent almost 5 months with him. I mean, not on a daily, day-to-day basis.
Why didn't you call me?
I didn't know you at the time. This was 10
that's
years
no
ago.
excuse.
Well, Les, I totally share the feeling with you, the sentiment. None of us would be here if it wasn't for Les. We all have a job because of Les. So it was an immense honor to work with him, let alone meet him. The record that I did that you mentioned is called American Made, World Played. Les Paul and Friends. It came out on Capitol Records in 2005 in honor of his 90th birthday.
Wow.
And had basically duets of Les with Eric Clapton, Keith Richards, Buddy Guy, Jeff Beck, Sting, Joss Stone, so many artists that were doing duets. So it was a pleasure. We started, the session started at Capitol Records and then continued at East Side Sound, which is the studio you see behind me, which is where I'm chief engineer in New York. Mm-hmm. I mixed the entire record on that console behind me. Nice. And it was a fantastic record. We started, most of the sessions we did with Les on guitar were either at East Side Sound or at his home. He has a home in New Jersey with a API console. So we went to his house to do sessions there as well.
Well, I beg the audience, please, I beg of you, if you enjoy engineering and if you enjoy the end product from engineering, just look up Wikipedia and look up Les Paul, and you'll be amazed at how much we owe that cat. He really, right, Mark?
And we owe everything to that cat. I mean, people think of Les Paul, they associate the name with the guitar.
Yeah.
And yes, he has invented the solid body electric guitar, but more importantly, to me at least, he's invented multi-track recording. And then he's been a part of inventing chorus and flanger and all these things that we, use every day in some way or shape.
In terms of your specific process, because there's different ones in the live side and different ones in the studio side. On the studio side, my sense is the purist Mark comes out and you want to get the note, not through a whole bunch, right to a place where you can do something with it. Not a lot of processing, not a lot of, is that part of the way you approach recording live?
Yeah, that's correct. I believe in the shortest signal path. And I believe in the people rehearsing and doing a couple takes rather than 25 takes or 99 takes. So, my signal chain when recording is usually mic to preamp to Pro Tools. So keep it as short as possible. In the past, of course, and in different studios, depending on their setup, sometimes I do go through the console. But if I can, I'll go straight as straight as I can. And I always ask people to rehearse. And, oftentimes if I'm in the jazz world, that's not even a question that you have to ask. It's kind of a given. In some other worlds, you have to remind them, but I'm interested in capturing great performances rather than manufacturing great performances.
We call that, we refer to it a lot. I don't say we call it, but we are at this show particularly lovers of the Nashville scene and the adherence to musicality and knowing how to play and walking in and reading each other and reading the music and making it feel natural, going home at 6 to have dinner, like doing it in a structured way where, and I love that you like recording live bands because that's where, I refer to this maybe too much, but in my experience, I was Maurice White's partner from Earth, Wind & Fire for about 6 years. And he just was the epitome of, let me capture it in the room. We'll figure out what we do with it later. And that turned into major things. And there's there's a skill to that intention that a lot of younger folks don't know because of the way they record. And man, when you're in there with a band and things are mic'd up properly and people are playing together, magic happens.
100%. I fully agree. I'm old school. I'm new school in some ways. I'm old school in other ways. And I'm definitely old school when it comes to preferring people to be in the same room playing together. And it doesn't even have to be in the same room because I love isolation. I love iso boots. I have no problem with iso boots, but I want them to play together. And if that means they have to be in the same room because there are no iso boots, I'll take that over doing piecemealing things one thing at a time. You just get better performances. That's why all the great records that we are all inspired by and continue to listen to 50 years later, we're done that way. So why reinvent the wheel?
Yeah, absolutely.
How you got started is so classic. I'm gonna repeat it back to you.
Okay.
You started a band. Your band rehearsed. You wanted to record that rehearsal. So little by little, you bought gear to record your band. Then you found yourself getting clients. And then next thing you know, you're where you are now, right?
Yeah.
Classic story. That's what we all do. That's what we all do.
Yeah. The only difference in that story is that when it really dawned on me that this could be a career was the night after a friend who was an engineer where I had done recordings at his studio had told me he was selling his console. Until he said that to me, it had not clicked in my head that I could become an engineer. I had not made that association. I was just like recording the rehearsals of my band, and I was thinking of myself as a musician, not really thinking what's going to happen if the music thing doesn't work out. And then this guy told me, I'm selling this big console. It's like 7 feet long and it's this much money. It was a lot of money for me at the time. Sure. And I was like, yeah, right. I don't know anyone who has that kind of money, let alone the space or interest for that kind of gear. And then that night it dawned on me. I was like, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to buy that console and I'm going to record other people. And so that's when it really dawned on me. And when it went from hobby to, job and career.
Yeah. And also it's mind-boggling the amount of times this happens. You're at a studio. You're like a little bit advanced. You can kind of do a little bit of work. The engineer that's recording Luther Vandross gets sick. You step in and rise to the top like a meteorite. How many times have we heard that, Herb? It's like
it wasn't quite a meteorite, but it was definitely a matter of being at the right place at the right time, for sure.
What's that saying? Opportunity is when luck meets preparedness. Is that what it is?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. But preparedness is definitely a big factor. I always use the word preparedness when people ask me, to go back to Zorn or Wilner. How do you tackle a Wilner section where everyone that's ever worked with Hal Wilner knows that the producer, who sadly died of COVID last year, would like literally invite 3 extra musicians after you already agreed on what was going to be the lineup for this particular session or this particular concert. Preparedness is what I always come back to. With Wilner, for example, I knew that if he said 3 string players, I would make an input list that accounted for 6 string players. And if he said 2 guitar players, I would make an input list that accounted for 4 guitar players, 4 amps, 4 music stands, 4 headphones. That's the preparedness that got me through all those gigs and all those curveballs. And I learned the hard way because the first time I worked with Wilner, I didn't know that was going to be the gig. So I was like, shit, I don't have an extra channel or I don't have an extra mic. Second gig on, I caught on fast.
And you know what, Mark, one of the things that you're talking about, you and Dave are talking about, is really, and this is for the audience, it's the key to life, is being as prepared as you can. You can't prepare for everything, but we'll guarantee you here, you can take it from us 3, if you don't prepare for nothing, you're going to have a shitty life. So the idea that if that's all you have to do to have a shot at doing well, come on. Like, you have to just copy success. You don't have to create a new thing. You emulate others and put your thing on it, and then go. And then you can be responsible for where you go in life. You don't have to wait for somebody to hand it to you. Be gifted, be lucky. You have to be ready. And I'll stop my editorial by saying, with over 500 episodes,
right.
Well, with over 500 episodes, the greats that grace our show, forget about Dave and I, say that over and over and over and over. Be prepared. Accept and embrace the lucky accident. It may be the hook to your next song. Have relationships. Listen to your heart and your gut. It's basic stuff. It's stuff that you use, and then you have the tools. Augment that, not take over that. And thank you very much for my editorial time. Now back to Mark.
No, I think that's really an excellent point. It happens time and time again, Herb. So another thing that happens is people will walk into my control room, and I might have not so much now, but once upon a time I would have like a lot of celebrities in that room. And I would say, hey, man, play them something, it's a good opportunity. Oh, man, I didn't bring my stuff. And man, it just drives me crazy. If I'd have had that opportunity, I could have been somebody.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I totally agree with you guys. I mean, you couldn't have said it better, Herb. It's all about doing the famous 10,000 hours. You got to put in the work. Nothing's going to happen without putting in the work.
If you take Malcolm Gladwell and what he just said, which is what you just said, and combine it with Mark Cuban, who always says, the only thing you can control is your effort.
Wow.
There's your key. That's what you can control. Now, Mark, tell us about, give me the theory of mixing with 0 dB.
You mean faders at 0 dB?
Yeah.
That's something that I do. I don't do it so much in the studio, but I do it live.
Right.
The reason I do it live is because when I have the sounds that I like from sound check and my faders at 0 dB, I have a point of reference to which I can go back after every song and a reminder of where things sounded good in case I get too caught up in my own stupid thinking I should improve on something that already sounded good. I'm not saying you can't improve on things. You always can. There's always room for improvement. And of course, when you do a live show, things will be completely different with a room full of people than they were during sound check. But any sound engineer knows that when you're mixing a live show, you tend to start pushing things more, doing moves that are much more about, things that you wouldn't do over the course of one song. But then at the end of the show, you find yourself with all faders like 10 or 12 dBs louder than where you started at. So that's what I mean by having a good reminder of where you started from, so you can go back to that very easily. So I usually do the sound check, leave my faders at 0 dB, mix the song. After the song is mixed, I pull the faders back to 0 dB. And if it's a console that allows you to do that with a snap or whatever, I'll do that. And then I start from the same place on the same song. And if there's something I need to change overall, there's always that gain knob. There's always EQ and other things. But that's a good point of reference to come back to.
And one of the big differences, obviously, it seems obvious, between mixing in the studio and then doing stuff live is that every night you're in a different room.
Yeah, of course.
And how much time do you need in that room, and what do you do to sort of get calibrated? Do you use tools to do it? Use your ears? What's your process?
It wildly depends on the artist that I'm touring with, and on what kind of package we're touring with. Because I used to tour with Lou Reed for 6 or 7 years. Most of the tours with Lou, I had my own console, and I had a system tech that would tune the PA before I arrived. That's a luxury that you don't always have. You have it on the bigger tours. If it's a smaller tour or a smaller venues, sometimes you don't have your own console, so you have to use what's there. Then, of course, I need a little bit more time. and often I'll listen to the PA. But in general, if I don't have a system tech and I don't have my own console, then my process is to go to the room early enough so I can listen to music that I know, and I can EQ the PA in a way that it responds the way I expect it to respond. And I walk around the room, make sure that the response is consistent. And then I start with the band and with the sound.
Got it. Love it. I happen to think sound checks are about the sexiest thing ever about live performances. And I spent so many years sneaking in venues in college and before and after, and just try to hide someplace and listen to the sound check, because it just felt, and musicians are relaxed, they're noodling, they're doing stuff, all kinds of cool shit would come out. Then you'd hear a bit of what was going to be later and hear it getting tweaked. I would leave and go, yeah, like I had my own show. And I always, weirdly enough, made friends with the guys who were controlling sound mixing or doing lighting, chiefly because I didn't want them to throw me out. This is a cool dude and kind of mentor me. But there's something magical that happens. And part of it is the science that you're doing to get ready for the big thing. Are you looking forward to getting back out on the road if it opens back up and the right stuff comes along?
I'm absolutely looking forward to that. And I'm looking forward to it even more so as a concert goer. I'm an avid concert goer. I mean, I kid you not when I tell you that pre-pandemic, my average would be to go to one show a night. And that's an average. Oftentimes I go to 2 or 3 shows a night, because New York is amazing and it allows you to do that. Yeah. My record is seeing 11 shows in one day. That was a long day that started early in the morning.
Damn.
But I love going to live concerts. So I can't wait for them to be back. And I can't wait to be back on a console and mixing them. It's, variety is the spice of life. And I've been missing that particular variety out of my life recently.
Your template is amazing. And I would like to hear again, guys that are watching, to go check his template out. I was shocked when I discovered your template. It was smaller than I expected. Explain.
The template has grown since that video was shot. I'll say that. Okay. So it's a little bit bigger. But the template, I mean, I do believe in less is more. And I also believe in not necessarily start from the same template every time. Like I'm not really, I do have a template, but I don't have a template of sounds to start with, because every sound is different. Yeah. So my template is more about routing. It's more about having, again, we come back to preparedness. If you look at my template, you'll see that it's all about having all the routing prepared so that I can do stems, do instrumentals, do TV versions, do acapellas, everything without having to create any single tracks to do that. But I don't have preset plugins. I have for every, let's say I have a reverb channel for vocals, I'll have my 5 favorite vocal reverbs to choose from, but they're all disabled so that when I start, I can decide based on the song and the sound of the vocal in this case, which of these 5 plugins will be the one that I think will sound best. And I can try them all 5 because they're in my template, but I don't have a preset one to always go with.
I noticed also what I liked was the way you handle the parallel compression stuff. You always, the stuff that you might parallel compress, you always have it ready to go and you got it labeled and everything. I'm gonna put that in mind.
Yeah. In my template, I have parallel compression for my main things that would have parallel compression, like drums. But again, they're all disabled. It's as easy as clicking a button to enable them, but I don't start with anything on because a template, in my opinion, should be a starting point that makes your work easier, but it shouldn't be. It shouldn't give a sound from the get-go, because unless you mix the same band every day, it's impossible. You don't know what you're going to be mixing. So you need to be versatile, and you need to be able to adjust your target so you don't end up making wrong decisions because you thought something sounded good yesterday on the opera, it's going to sound good today on this metal band, you know?
Yeah, I do know.
Question: film and TV are part of the portfolio. We see more and more that there's kind of a hybrid thing developing now, because we're often fans, and God knows I've said it a lot because it's true. Audio is the only discipline that's in everything. If you don't have audio, you ain't got nothing else. And I think that has been underserved by the community and understanding their leverage and their power. So we've been trying to help adjust that. But that said, we see this coming together of these folks, and folks are in all the content that's in demand to satisfy streamers and broadcast and cable and film. And it's a place to grow from. And I think folks grow from each other. Does that satisfy the itches in your creative soul, being able to do film and television?
Everything helps with the itches in the creative soul.
Yeah.
I haven't done as much film and TV as I have done records, for sure. But I always get the occasional job here and there. My interests are more in sound design and in mixing surround sound.
Yeah.
So I've done sound design for commercials. I recently, just last month, I did a 5.1 mix for a new movie. And I'm going to mix the entire audio for another movie that's being shot or about to be shot the next couple of months. So, it's always interleaved with other things.
Yeah.
I'd say for every one film, there's another at least 25 records that I've done in between. But I do love, again, sorry to be repetitive, I love the variety.
Yeah, and I don't think it's repetitive. I think that it may be one of the takeaways from here that, we try to make sure that the audience gets granular stuff, and then gets what Dave calls meat and potato stuff, and then there's the dreamy stuff, the whole 180 degree, and some of it is preparedness, as you said, and some of it is things that bring you reputation and scratch your soul, and those are goals to reach for. That's good in our business, and in a business that can be notoriously unstable. That's what creates stability, is getting to those places where you can feed yourself like that. And it's great to hear pros say that and understand that, they're living their dream, but they're living it by being active in those particular silos. How do you see, are you excited about the future? We've gone through processes where sometimes it looked bleak, and sometimes over the last 4 or 5 years, not just this last year, but I feel pretty optimistic about where things are going, where things are headed. What's your take, Mark?
It depends what we're talking about. I mean, if we're talking about
music, being able to mix and come out of this COVID stuff with opportunities in the audio space to expand your career and use these tools.
Yeah, I'm pretty positive about that. I'm excited about getting on the other end of this. Yeah. I just got vaccinated with my second dose 2 days ago, which is actually why I had asked you guys to reschedule this. Because they gave me my second dose appointment on the same day we had this show scheduled for. Hence the moving it by 2 days. So yesterday I was a bit under the weather. Today I'm perfectly fine. I can't wait to be, out there traveling. Things are picking up. In fact, I just got booked for my first gig outside of the US. Recording gig in a different studio in a different country in a couple of weeks, and that hasn't happened in a while. Although I did do some sessions at Abbey Road back in November, but that was my doing because I live between New York and London, and this was a project that was developing in London, and so obviously Abbey Road was the best choice there. But this is the first time they're flying me internationally for a recording. And so obviously things are starting to pick up, and I'm very excited about that.
One of the favors another favor I'm going to ask you is, one of my favorite artists of all time is Lou Reed. One of my favorite songs of all time is Walk on the Wild Side. And one of my second favorite songs is the live version of Sweet Jane. Any stories for me about Lou Reed?
Well, I got so many stories. In fact, I think I'm wearing a Lou Reed rock and roll shirt today.
Oh man, that's from the album. That's from
And I just
Alive.
today I had lunch with Stuart Herwood, who was Lou Reed's guitar tech for 15 years. So yeah, I got tons of Lou Reed stories. I mean, Lou was, was an incredible artist, a rocker, a legend. I've had the pleasure of working with him for about 7 years. And in those 7 years, we've become friends. So, we would sometimes go out to concerts together or dinners together. So I got to know the man and I got to know the artist. And they're two different things that often converge into one. But it's nice to see both sides of a person's, appearance. But yeah, I mean, where do I start? I mean, I could tell you, I'll tell you a funny story.
We can do it offline, if you don't.
No. I'll tell you a funny story because, there's things that you don't want to do in a podcast, but this I can. Yeah. So we went to Israel on a tour, and we had half a day off before a late flight back to the US, I think. So Lou said, I would like to go see Jerusalem. We were in Tel Aviv. Mm-hmm. So I think Tel Aviv to Jerusalem is maybe an hour drive or 2 hour drives, I forget. So the promoter said, okay, I'll set you up with a van and with a driver that can act as a tour guide, so you can be taken to the Wailing Wall and all the spots that you want to hit if you're in Jerusalem. Mm-hmm. Let me know who else wants to go. So a few of us went, Laurie Anderson, Lou Reed's wife, and a few of us in the band and in the crew decided to tag along. So we start walking in the streets of Jerusalem, which are narrow, winding, beautiful, obviously one of, the ancient city of the world. Mm-hmm. It's an incredible town. And we have a little crowd of people gathering behind us, following us. And we assume, because in the last 2 days we spent in Tel Aviv, we were plagued by paparazzis everywhere we went, restaurants, after show, everything. It was always paparazzis. So we assumed there was more paparazzis, but they didn't have cameras. They just were following us. Or at least they didn't have cameras we could see. So anyway, long story short, we eventually get to the Wailing Wall. We take our pictures with our phones or point and shoots, whatever we had back then. This was about 10, 15 years ago. Mm. And that's when these people behind us mustered the courage to come up and say, they asked me actually, because I kind of went ahead to figure out what they wanted from us. Mm. And they said, we would like to get a picture with Mr. Spielberg. And at that point, I turned around and I realized that the tour guide, the driver guide that they had given us, looked exactly like Spielberg. And Lou Reed, who saw this happening, didn't miss a beat and said, yeah, sure, I'll take the picture.
Absolutely.
And he grabbed the guy's camera and he had us and the Steven Spielberg with these people from Jerusalem, and Lou Reed took the photo.
Oh, that's fabulous. That sounds like Dave. we would do something.
We got so much laughter out of that one.
Oh, that's fantastic. That is fantastic. All right. This is our celebrated batter's box, where the metaphor is baseball. Dave is going to throw the pitches and you will bat them out of the park. And we really enjoy when you can bean Dave. So try to send some back his way, tell him to go to hell, whatever it is, just abuse him. So Dave, are you ready with batter's box? Because you got a tough one here. This is an international guy, plays in 2 cities.
Yeah, I'm thinking about the little guy in Peanuts where the girl removes the football and keeps tricking him. So
yeah, Lucy.
So we got to solve that soon.
All right, here we go. Fire it up.
Summing.
Analog.
Strings.
Live.
808s.
Bass.
Horns.
Live.
Distortion.
The more the merrier.
Major or minor?
Minor.
Yeah, me too. Beatles.
Rolling Stones.
Ah.
Yes, sir. I'd give up now, man. That's the greatest answer ever. Beats per minute or tempo?
Tempo.
Consoles.
Analog.
Virtual synths.
Prefer real instruments.
Okay. And last but not least, guitar pedals.
Never enough.
I know. Well, man, you were great. I mean, I'll concede defeat.
I can see it coming. When George Clooney plays you in the movie, your skills are just down. To see how smooth he was, it was really an international thing. It wasn't like, the guys from Miami or the guys from. It was very smooth. Yeah, Mark, that was very Pensado. You're definitely one of us, or we want to be one of you.
Yeah.
I was sweating. By the way, I would like to specify that by answering Rolling Stones to Beatles, I wasn't implying one is better than the other.
Right.
You will notice behind me there's a box set of all the Beatles record.
Yeah.
My girlfriend is a huge fan. She knows George. What's his son? The son's George Martin's Jr. I forget the son's name. I met him briefly. My girlfriend is a violinist and works at Abbey Road all the time.
Well,
so, I have huge respect for the Beatles, but I really associate them with the Rolling Stones as two things that go hand in hand.
Oh no, I completely get it. Two quick Beatles stories before we wrap up. Very quick. One is one of our favorite studios in Nashville, Blackbird Studios. The owner, John McBride, is such a Beatle freak that a lot of how you get around and in and out of locked stuff is knowing Beatles trivia. If you don't know enough, you can't. That's one. And then secondly, in honor of the great Al Schmitt, who we just lost. So whenever this airs, we lost Al in the third week of April at 91 years old. Our very first award show, I had the nerve to go to Al and say, "Hey, Al, you think you get Paul McCartney to give you a shout out and say our names?" And 2 weeks later, we get this videotape of Paul McCartney going, "Hey, Al, congratulations on your Pensado Award." And literally, Dave, I told Dave that over the phone, and we both broke into tears. I
was driving too. I was driving. I had to pull off the road.
We could, just to have a Beatle say your name was just, it was, and I'm glad we're still that enthusiastic about it after all these years. Although I will tell you that I then went back to Al and said, "Could you get Dylan?" And he appreciated that I would ask. He didn't get him, but he tried.
Well, I think the Beatles changed music forever, and for the better, I would add. So, and what I share with the Beatles is the desire to always experiment and always push the boundaries. It's part of why I like working with Zorn so much. I've done over 112 or 13 records with Zorn.
Wow.
And it's been a constant pushing of the boundaries.
Wow.
Like constant throughout his career. And I've only known him for a small portion of his career. And the Beatles taught us that. They taught us that if you have something that works, doesn't mean you shouldn't push the boundaries and look for something else. And I appreciate that. And I live by that. So, Beatles are awesome, and long life to Al Schmitt. I only got to meet him once at one of those engineer lunches in LA.
Yep.
And he was such a fantastic, the thing I'll always, obviously his discography speaks for himself, and his heritage is going to be with us forever.
Yeah.
And he was one of the greatest engineers of our time, hands down. But we spent the whole lunch not talking about music and talking about Africa and his trips and his pictures of lions and zebras. Exactly. And he was just like the most humble and sincere. You could tell there wasn't a mean bone in that man's body,
Yeah.
And he was just incredible. So
yeah.
And I think, Dave, before you wrap this up, I think for our audience, those are a couple of takeaways that you should remember. Push the boundaries, never relax on that. Be human, be fully developed. It adds to you. If you talk to Al Schmitt, you talked about his love for animals. Sometimes you talk about Lisa, his wife, you talk about trips he took.
Yeah.
And then when you go in the studio, the other thing about Al was he was always on time and you always had to come prepared. And his humanity led his craftsmanship, but that's what made his craftsmanship so good. Those lessons stand the test of time. That's not about somebody being older, somebody younger. That's about you wanting to be great.
And he was always elegant, and he always ended every speech by saying, "Be good to all living things."
Every time.
And that's, that's the lesson to be learned there, that somebody who's had it all, has met everyone, has worked with everyone, still was teaching us that lesson.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's the most important thing.
Marc Urselli, just a pleasure to spend time with you, man.
Absolutely.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me, guys.
Use our platform anytime you want. We do lots of different things and panels and live things. And oftentimes we like to reach back to our friends and say, come share. So let us know if we could ever do that with you. We'll make it easy, and people would love to hear from you and learn from you.
I would love to be back and love to help in any way I can.
Dave Pate, wrap us up.
I'm going to go back to the preparedness discussion. How do you get prepared? What I teach my assistants, well, I don't teach anybody, but what I try to get my assistants to learn is make your journey in audio about the journey, not the destination. When you put the destination first, you'll never be prepared for anything. But once you enjoy the journey, everything becomes fun. And that's when you pick up that information that you need to be prepared. We'll see you guys. Bye-bye.